The foundation of human understanding teaches an observation exercise, often called meditation, which permits you to become objective toward your problems and allows your heartaches, bad habits, fears, and anxieties to be completely eliminated from your life without effort on your part. Until you have begun to practice this exercise, much of what you see and hear on the following program may be shocking and upsetting to you. But if you will listen calmly and with an open mind, you may discover the key to the peace of mind and joy for which you've been searching all of your life. And now, from the foundation of human understanding, here is Roy Masters.
Welcome once again to the program, How to Control Your Emotions. And there's a lot to controlling one's emotions, a lot to it, but you have to start somewhere, and that somewhere is a very simple place. And we're going to talk about that, always starting from that simple, basic point of view and going up and down the scale to show you the cause and effect becoming cause of all the negative problems you have in your life. Now, I thought I'd start off this evening. I did announce it, and no new idea had popped into my mind to change it. I did announce that I'd talk about forgiveness. Is that all right with you folks? Because that's, unforgiveness is an emotional factor. It's called judgment. And does anybody know what forgiveness is here? Do you really know what forgiveness is? What is forgiveness to you?
Well, I'm repeating your words, and since then...
You're the lady that had the exorcism.
Yes, sir.
The other night. Or a few weeks ago. You have a completely different face now.
Completely different, and I'm happy I can smile.
Okay.
And since I heard your words, they really stuck in my claw, and I understood them.
In your claw?
Well,
In your claw? You're not finished with your exorcism yet.
it's seeing somebody in the error they're in and not judging the error.
All right. Now, what's the
Seeing
difference
beyond
between
it.
discerning and judging? Does anybody know the
Oh,
difference?
yes.
What do you want
When
to
you
finish
do-
it?
Yes. When you discern, you see where they're coming from.
Yes.
And you speak with a truthful heart, and there is no condemnation in your soul. And you pray that they will hear you with your truthful
Can
heart.
anybody add to that a very missing ingredient?
Okay.
Yeah,
The word no condemnation is right.
It seems to me that forgiving actually means that they don't know any better.
Well, they may know better.
Oh,
Then
they
what do
may
you do
know
with that?
Well,
They may enjoy it. They may love to hurt you. There are some people who can't help but hurt you, and they're waiting for someone to stop them. Not to beat them down and bash them to the ground, to stop them with forgiveness. And now, what is the key ingredient? It's amazing. I can sit here every night till kingdom come and tell you what it is, and it's such an elusive thing that it's hard to remember. What I've said about memorizing the spiritual things is that they're not memorizable. Is there such a word as that? Forgive me if there isn't. But the insights that I have, I cannot remember. Well, I can to some degree, but when I start to talk from my memory about what I said before, it feels like I'm chewing cud. I'm upchucking it and ruminating, and it feels like it's not new. It isn't. There's something wrong with that. It's not real. It's artificial. I feel false to myself. I have to speak to you out of something brand new every time. I can't look through yesterday's eyes. I can't look through tomorrow's eyes. I have to come from an ever-present reality within me, and then you can see where I'm coming from, and then you become a credible, respectable authority to other people. And the most noticeable evidence that you are a credible authority that people can respond to, and the other side that people can respond to, rather than the other side that people have responded to and are coming at you with that, see what I mean? That cruelty, is that you do not respond with resentment. Take that word, resentment, and plaster it on the middle of your forehead. Tattoo it somewhere and burnish it into your soul. Resentment. Resentment it comes from the Latin, here I go, someone's going to get me for this, but it means, resentare, means to feel again, to feel twice. See? In other words, you can be angry, and then later on, you can think about what you're angry about, and that's resentment. You're sort of recalling emotion, and for some reason, you hang on to that emotion, you see, to sustain your pride. And then after a while, you learn to respond with resentment almost immediately. And resentment is not ordinary anger. I would just want to give you that difference between resentment and ordinary anger. Resentment has something to do with your pride. If someone attacks your kid and wants to kidnap him, naturally you come rushing out of your house. You're angry. You want to stop that person, and it's all over with. I mean, it's natural anger. Just one cotton-picking minute, and all your juices are flowing. But resentment is something else. Resentment is almost a spiritual, it's almost a reuse of anger. Because you can sit in your house later on and think, that dirty swine, see? That dirty rat. And all of a sudden you start to think about what happened. The accident, maybe you had an accident and someone banged into you, and you were okay at the time. But later on you got the reactions. But that's when you started to think about it, and you started to resent it, and then you start to resent everything. And that resentment supports something called judgment. See, now that judgment, it prevents you from discerning. As I can look at a person doing something wrong to me or to someone else. There's no excuse to be resentful because he did something wrong to somebody else's kid, or be resentful because of what's going on in the world that you don't like. Always looking for a reason to fuel that judgment, you know what I mean? Looking for something wrong to resent or judge. But I can look at a person and not resent them. See that they do what is wrong. I can tell what is wrong, or something is wrong. Maybe I don't know exactly what it is. But I withhold judgment. Now, my heart can beat because it could be a dangerous situation. It could be scary. It could give a lot of pressures. My knees will knock. That doesn't mean to say I can have all the other physical reactions attendant to that moment. Fear, maybe, but no resentment. Now, there's something about resentment that sensitizes you to the world you live in. So the more resentful you are, the less responsive you are to what you know is right. Because you're judging. And judgment separates you from God, and you become your own God. And because you become your own God, you're guilty. Now, how do you deal with guilt? You deal with guilt by judging, resenting, to stay ahead of judgment. Because the moment you stop judging, resenting, passing judgment on everybody, the guilt of you playing God and judging everybody, hatred really, catches up with you, and you can't stand yourself. But since your pride is involved, it does not understand the mechanism or the protocol of doing about face and saying, oops, I'm sorry. Say, I'm sorry for judging. I'm trying to be you. I know that. See? What it does, because pride is involved, it's insensitive to instruction at a certain point until pain catches up with us and makes us, want to have an answer of some kind. The pain of our life is so bad because of our judgments and our angers, and because of the interaction with other people, their reaction to us, our projection into them. But it makes us want to keep on judging, to stay ahead of the judgment. We get more and more sensitive to the wrongs of life, and we can't forget. And it's stuck in our craw, See? Any questions about this? You understand how this resentment and judgment goes? That if you can't forgive, you cannot forget. In other words, if you say, I forgive people, and you haven't forgotten it, then you haven't forgiven anybody. Does anybody not understand that? Anybody want to question me on this subject? The gentleman way in the... Yeah, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying about resentment, but you know what? It's the distinction between you're saying that natural anger is okay.
There's a certain amount of natural anger. Now, I remember a time, a long time ago, when I had a fight with my wife. Of course, I've had a lot of fights with my wife. But on this particular occasion, I have got to understand this thing called judgment and resentment. And some very strong physical force was necessary. Yes, I had to physically lift her and carry her, drag her across the room someplace, you know, to make sure she sat down and stopped being ridiculous. And then most men don't know how to do that without being very angry and upset, resentful. And they get their energy from anger. And once you start to respond to temptation and get your energy from anger, you then are degraded in the person's eyes that you are administering your justice to. See what I'm saying? Because your justice is not out of love. It is out of reacting with resentment. It's not the same thing that if you resent somebody, you are separated from the power to overcome them with love, overcome their evil or their craziness with love. It's a very subtle thing. Jesus was purported to have thrown the money changers out of the temple. It never said he was angry. It says he just threw them out. I mean, he says, you can't do this and you can't do that, and get the hell out of here. I'm sure he used some very choice words. But he took his motivation from his inner and not the devil or the outer. See, because in other words, if you provoke me and I respond, I have lost my ability to reply in a constructive way. If you see what I mean, the Israelis are very good. That's how they defeat their enemy. They take the intimidation very well, and they move in their own time, and they move from their own strength, not as a result of in other words, animals, when you make a certain move, those animals will run or fight, and each animal is predictable in its behavior. That's how you can catch them. They only have certain choices. They're very limited. But the human being, once he's caught up in reacting like an animal, he forgets his other choices as a human being. As a matter of fact, once you respond with resentment and judgment, you are beneath the very thing that has created the ripple. Someone drops a ripple in the pond, and the boats rock. Well, the rocking of the boat is the effect. Someone dropping the pebble in the water is the cause. And that's the reason why violent people are so effective and so dominant. And so they're always evolved to positions of power and authority, because they're able to cause resentment and make us incapable of responding, constructively and overcoming their evil with our good. Who understands that?
Oh, I do.
I forgot what your question was.
That just the distinction between resentment and natural anger.
Yes. Yeah, you want to fight with me? I'll take you outside. We'll have at it. But I'm not resentful. I remember times. I might have to tell you what happens with my wife. I thought to myself, "Wow, I blew it this time." But I noticed that after the dust settled, there was no conflict, no guilt. My conscience didn't bother me. Something was okay. And she was okay. She'd responded to the strength. See, I can, if a woman is yelling and screaming and, you know how women can be sometimes. See, well, you can get hold of one and say, now, woman, use strength. Now, you can actually transmit through holding a person. You can transmit hate, or you can transmit the strength of no-nonsense love. It's called tough love. It's hard to describe, but it's not an emotion. It's a power that is there when you give up resentment. It is not there when you have resentment. When you have resentment, the other person knows they've got you. They cannot acknowledge, and they tease you even more because it pleases them that you're the effect and they are the cause. Why do you think we have gang wars and violence? It's because people who have lost control, lost power, because they have become the victim of that sort of thing themselves. They go out and bash little old ladies up because they want to be the cause of somebody else's effect. And the fear gives them the illusion that they're in charge. So as long as you react with resentment and fear, because resentment and fear are connected to each other. No resentment, no fear. And remember that. To the degree that you can conquer your judgment or resentment and judgment, because the resentment supports a judgment. And even though you see something wrong, it becomes a judgment and separates you from the power to overpower with good. You dig? Follow that? So I've remembered I was very good at martial arts. I'm not anymore, so you can come and get me anytime you want. But I'll overcome you with my laser beams. I remember one time, and this is not bragging, I hardly ever lost a fight in my life because I was excellent at judo and jiu-jitsu, very good at it. And as a Jewish boy, you're in Europe during the war, England, you had to defend yourself, and I learned. And I always stood up for myself. Many a time I've stood up for myself, but this particular time I was working at a store, and the young man said, he really, for some reason he didn't like me, and he said he was going to wait for me and downstairs, and I warned him. I said, I'm a much better, at fighting than he thinks I am, and if he knew how good I was, he wouldn't be so brave. I accused him of being a coward, because the only reason why he wanted to beat me up is because he thought he could win. If he didn't think he could win, he wouldn't do it, right? So anyway, I knocked the hell out of him, and I picked him up, no anger, and bought him a cup of coffee and apologized to him. See? And he became my friend. See that? And in other words, you have to be strong with your family. You may have to be strong with your wife. I'm not saying you have to knock the hell out of them. But if it's not anger, if it's only normal, healthy anger, but not resentment. Resentment changes where you're coming from. See? If you respond with resentment, you are inferior. In other words, your whole modus operandi is changed. You're subject to the temptation. You're subject to it. You're not the master of it. And that's the reason why you go to work and you get frustrated and resentful at work, and the boss takes it out on you, and he does his little mean little things, and he puts pressures on you and accuses you of things you didn't do. You become resentful. And you don't show it. You can't express it. But you judge him. You hate him. You come home and take it out on your kids. See? And now they have that resentment going. And you've altered their consciousness. And so on down the line. See? And I'm making a point that resentment is a very special little thing that's very close to the soul.
Maybe if I relate a couple of experiences, it'll help clear it up. Now, like I know what you mean by resentment. Like, for instance, years ago, this example that comes to mind, I was working for a guy, and he called me a jerk, right?
Well, maybe you were.
I was at the time. But, I remember later on, I work in like 15 minutes, I thought, that guy called me a jerk, and I think about it, and I get angry, all upset again. Okay, now that's a resentment. I understand that, and you're saying that
they kill you.
Right.
Resentment kills you.
I understand that. That's unhealthy.
Resentment comes out in so many forms, so many different mental conditions: depression, anxiety, guilt, frustration, violence, sickness, disease, maybe cancer, many other forms, arthritis, multiple sclerosis, just ulcers. It comes out in many different forms. If it doesn't come out on someone, it begins to affect you, emotionally and psychologically.
Okay, now, but here's where I don't know if it's so much a confusion, but say, for example, someone stepped on my toe, or recently I had someone steal something from me, okay?
Yes.
And when they stole something from me, you know, I have more understanding now. I could see that the person was wrong, and I didn't get emotional about it. I didn't judge them. And when that happens, you know, I feel...
But you can't spend too much time explaining your question.
Okay. Well, here's what I'm saying, is I don't hardly experience... I even got in a fight about it.
Well, never mind. What's the question?
Isn't that anger that you talk about that's okay? Isn't that kind of a rare thing that's maybe only reserved?
No, there's hardly anybody in the world that understands it. You see, the anger, the healthy anger, the Christ-like anger, the throwing the money changes out of the temple anger, the strength that comes to overcome evil with good, the resisting of the evil and overcoming with the good, is that kind of anger comes first from withholding judgment. If someone steps on your toe, you know, and maybe they mean it, maybe they don't, but you get a little flash in your brain, a little flash of resentment. You know the little resentment, it isn't anger. It isn't something that requires a great display of courage, like someone kidnapping somebody, you know, you're one of your family, and you're rushing out of the house and using all your strength. It is a little zzz in your brain. Who knows what I'm talking? A little resentment, a little electrical current, and then you can't forget. It keeps going round and round and round and round, and every time you think of it, you resent it. Every time you resent it, you milk it of more judgment. And every time you see it, the more judgment, it stays in your mind, and it preys on your mind. And you start weird things start to happen to you. You start to be depressed. You start to feel anxiety. You start to be afraid to go to work. You can't face that person. And you see that person coming down the street, you walk on the other side. Or he catches you and crosses over, and then you can't do enough bowing and scraping. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes.
And then you will say, why did I do that? And you resent it again. You resent him yourself. See? When you judge others, you judge yourself. And it's in the scripture, judge not, or else you'll be judged. If you give up judgment of others, the judgment on yourself will disappear. Now, when you start to give up resentment, when the first thing you learn to do when you get up in the morning is you meditate, you become objective, and you learn to get into that space. And with that space, it carries with it a power to watch for the opportunity to overlook, like I say on my materials, on my cassettes. Watch for the opportunity. And for the novice, that's more important in the very beginning, to start watching, because most of our lives has been just the opposite of that. We look for the opportunity to be upset because we have become addicted. The judgment or the pride, it owes its life to something evil. And it has to plug into something evil. It needs the temptation to exist. See, evil, if we respond to temptation, what have I said before? Don't we become a little bit like we have an imprint? The temptation has made us a little bit like itself. We've become the brainchild. Well, then a strange thing happened. The only life you have is to go on judging. Because when you judge, you have to have something evil to judge. See, and your whole life is based around something negative. But you have a negative existence, a reverse existence. You have a reverse polarity. Instead of living by faith and forgiveness, see, and your life revolves around responding to what's good in your heart, which says, don't respond. You know, revenge is mine, saith the Lord, I shall pay back. See, instead of listening to that and trusting it, you yourself have become God and you try to pay back. And you'll formulate all different formulas in your mind, and you become judge and jury and executioner, and you're hatching out these little plots. But you're always looking for something to be upset about, because you're addicted, because the life that you have, which originally originated through resenting someone, your father or your mother usually were the culprits. That's where the evil came through into your life. Now that is sitting inside you, and having separated you from God to be your own God, the only way you can be God is to go on judging, like God does. Because that leads to the fear of judgment, doesn't it? Because of what it does to you. Should we talk about the fear of judgment? You can sit down now, because I'm going to give somebody else a question. Now, yeah.
One thought. Here's what I hear you saying, that if I'm understanding correctly.
I've taken it a long way, haven't I?
if someone stepped on my toe, okay, just say stepped on my toe,
Withhold judgment.
right, and that it
There's
seems,
no need
it
to
seems
be
to me
angry.
you're saying that righteous anger or natural anger that is not
If it's needed, it will come.
right, but
Mostly it isn't even needed.
right. That's what I'm getting at. It seems to me it comes only after you've been patient,
Right.
and had no.
Well, we got a break now for station because we got just 2 minutes to round off.
Okay.
Thank you very much. In other words, anger, violent anger, mostly isn't necessary. If you tell a joke, if someone tells you a rude joke, and you don't laugh at that rude joke, then the other person feels funny. Now, most of the times you laugh in order to not make them feel funny because you want them to be your friend.
That's right.
See? So you feel obligated to laugh even if it isn't funny. You laugh, and then he got you because they're the cause and you're the effect. And that's how salesmen start to get to you and sell you things they shouldn't. But the thing is that for the most part, no violence is necessary. When it is necessary, it will not come. You'll have strength beyond your wildest dreams. I could tell you stories you wouldn't believe. Almost superhuman stories of what's happened because of that in times of great stress in my own life. I'm not going to brag right now because I'll lose it. Okay? So most of the time, if you just look at a person without resenting them, without judging them, they'll cringe because they'll start to see you not judging them. You're holding up a mirror. And with that, we'll continue on our subject on our next segment. You can listen to my program on radio, the same kind of program on radio, KIEV, 870 on the dial in Los Angeles at 9 a.m. in the morning, Monday through Friday. And if you want to write to us, many other parts of the country we have radio programs too. Please keep us on the air with your contributions and purchase the materials. Otherwise, if we don't get any response, we'll just have to pull the plug and try some other day when we got the seed money back again. So if you're enjoying this program and it's enlightening, it's your duty to help yourself. Thank you very much. Join us tomorrow night.
Part 2 is next.
Welcome once again to the program, How to Control Your Emotions. And I've said last evening, we have the same audience here because we're taping all of these 5 sessions in one evening. But to the audience, it's last evening that the root of all of the problems of our life, 99 and 9/10% of them actually, come from a little pee-wee, little tiny, little dastardly little emotion called resentment. It's invisible and it is hidden and you can't see it, and it builds and builds and builds and becomes the corrupter of all the way everything we feel in our body is perverted by it. Our sexual appetites are perverted by it. Our thinking is perverted by it, turn negative. We start to doubt, to judge, to worry. Our appetites, our eating habits are altered by it. The way we see people is altered. We see enemies as friends and friends as enemies, because once the resentment takes hold and turns your mind around, the polarity of your thinking around, it makes you alien to what's right. All people who judge, resent, supports judgment, and it creates an opposition to what's, in other words, it turns your thinking around so that you're no longer thinking from above, like the mountain flowing, the river flowing the mountain to the sea, from within. That's cut off. The minute you start to be resentful and judgmental, the humility, the child of God, that which was created to express, to idealize the purpose of God on earth as is in heaven, that person is cut off from being able to express that will. And something unholy appears, takes root in us, and is in conflict, in opposition to it. See? So that you can't think naturally positive anymore. You think in reverse, negative. You doubt instead of believe. You're mistrusting. Or, you trust all the wrong people. Because the wrong starts to seem right to you. Because the wrong is the basis of who you are. Therefore, any love, you can't find the love of God because you have to give up judgment. And when you give up judgment, you have to die, and then you'll be born again. When you give up emotion, see how I said that? Once the soul has realized that judgment has separated him from God, this emotion which supports judgment called resentment, it separates you from God to be your own God, then the pride of life, which is you playing God, has its spiritual root in that which has tempted it to be prideful and judgmental. So this was in your mother and father. You judged your father, you judged your mother, and lo and behold, what did you become? You took on the identity, the same spirit. You even grow up to beat up your kids like your mother beat you up or something like that, right? But you find yourself comforted, being attracted to all the wrong people because the wrong is right to you. And the wrong is the basis. Your whole life revolves around the wrong. You need the wrong for two reasons. One, to maintain your judgment. See? So you can judge the wrong and forget you're wrong for judging. Got it? How it's a vicious cycle. You need the wrong to reinforce the pride of judgment, to reinforce that kind of existence. The wrong is right. Therefore, your whole life revolves around being upset with things. Now, you can't go all through life being upset with things because it's too negative. You can't handle the pain. You have to have release. Now you look for love. But the people who love you, the people you're attracted to love and to love in return, are never the right people. Because they are always the ones that agree that your wrong is right. Let's say you have an argument with your wife or your husband. You have a good knockdown, drag-out fight. And you get really mad and you're crying. And the lady who's a divorcee, usually it's a divorcee, next door, you cry on her shoulder and she says, there, that brute, and starts to comfort you. So what's happened is that you have found a wrong that agrees that you're wrong, your hatred towards your husband is right. That's how Hitler was able to control the whole nation. He gave the Germans, the Nazis, an inferior race to hate. Okay? And when they've hated and expressed their violence towards them, they were all feeling guilty. And therefore he would console them and remind them what wonderful people that they were right. He encouraged, in other words, his love made them hate even more. It gave them the right to judge. And so they judged. And it brought out that bestiality. And he acted through that bestiality. He put his will on earth as it is in hell. And he acted through the whole German race, see? Now that's how people can control you. They will give you something to hate. And they will pass gossip around about a certain person and you start to judge them. But then you find yourself friendly or friends with a person who gave you that person to judge. And that person you're judging may be perfectly innocent. But once you've made your judgment, you can't call it back. Because once the pride of judgment is in you, you can't admit that you're wrong for judging. There are even people who've lent money or given money to charlatans and they won't testify against them in court. Why is that? Because they feel sorry for them, you see, and they don't like to admit they've made a mistake. And their judgments can never be wrong, and therefore it's easy for the scoundrel to get away with it. You understand that? Okay, questions? Nothing. I've covered the whole ground so well. Oh, well, you can't ask questions. You're too far in the dark. You'll have to come. Come on closer, closer. Come on down.
During meditation, Roy, I know you don't want to hear this too much, but you say you see your past resentments and guilt come up,
Yeah.
Is this normal?
Yes.
It is?
I'll tell you why that is.
But these resentments are something that should be seen and shouldn't be looked down upon as being wrong. It's
No.
okay to see that.
Yes.
Okay.
The resentments that you have accumulate in you like sewerage, I don't know, like constipation. It just accumulates in you and fouls you up completely. And resentments are the means by which you reinforce the pride that is now become you. You're no longer a creature of the light, humble, subject to the forces of your beyond within, but you're now subject and created, recreated, if you like, in the image of that which has violated you and tempt you to fall to being the extension of whoever they are. So if people can violate you, do something very cruel to you, they put a little bit of themselves in you, and now you find that you are addicted to judging and creating a self, gathering an identity from judging. You see what judgment does? It is an embrace of temptation. When you're looking for something wrong because you are made of it. Is that clear? That you're actually made of this substance. It's earthy and sensual and evil, wicked, and it's an exact opposite of everything that was meant to be. And it loves lies. You make excuses, don't you? Mm-hmm. Has anybody ever made an excuse here? Who hasn't made an excuse? When you've reacted to pressure and temptation and done something wrong, your mind automatically settles the matter. In other words, it will give you, you'll rationalize your own, this particular deed. See? It will give you a reason why it's right, why you did the right thing. I did it because. See? And you will find some way to make it noble and make it right and give yourself a reason. And that becomes your truth. That's how you become confused. So every time you react, it's because you need a fusion of life. You see, you need a little fix for the self that's gone wrong a long time ago. Because the only way you can exist is to connect through the resentment to the very resentment, the very kind of emotion that created you or recreated you in its image a long time ago. You need that emotion to connect you back to the spirit that created you or recreated you, because without that you can't exist. You start to fall apart. You can't sit still. Haven't you noticed you can't sit still? You feel uncomfortable. You have to look for something to do, to involve yourself in. And it's always the things you involve yourself is in something upsetting. You look for intrigue. You look, everything goes wrong in your house. What do? You throw a monkey wrench in the works. You can't be happy very long. You've got to be upset. You have to create something to be upset about. If the wrong isn't there, you'll create it. So you'll make it happen so that you can connect to the source of your life through it by reacting to it. Because when you react, you literally connect to the source of who you are. And it separates you from realizing that it's wrong. That's how you reject reality, the truth, the conscience, the painful conscience. When you sit still, you can't sit still very long because the reality catches up and it will slay you in the spirit. You feel like you're going to die if you sit still. Who knows what I'm talking about? But that's what Christ says. You've got to die and be born again, because that's the self that's looking for that connection, looking for some sleazy, exciting, forbidden, upsetting, angry experience. So it can go on existing and displacing the real you, of course. And you identify with that and you excuse it. And your mind becomes confused. And those becomes your truths. Now, the way back, he's holding up questions, and I don't mind you stopping me, but I'm on a roll now. If you can stop me anytime you want to now. Okay, but every time you react, you are experiencing the wrong kind of life. And I have said before, you have to go through experience and not experience go through you. You have to go through experience. Without that, otherwise you can't be in the world and not of it. You'll be of the world and in the world. You'll be gathering your identity like an animal who gathers his identity by interacting with experience, because that's how he reinforces what he is. He connects to his environment, and the environment, the energies, the life, the form, the directions, the ecology of it. The life forces enter in there, see? He reacts and runs, he reacts and fights. So it maintains its form and adds to it, perhaps. You follow? Everybody following? Okay? Yeah?
You know, it's funny how you can talk about the negative, but let's say you could have this perfect state of mind. How can you describe it? It seems like it's wordless.
Can't describe the perfect state of mind, because the perfect state of mind must describe itself. I will not rob you of discovering the perfect state of mind. That's all the positive thing. You understood that, don't you? Because I become your God.
Yes.
I won't even give you a diet. If I give you a diet and you start to follow it, you start to follow the giver of the diet. You can't ever find your truth. That's why I always talk in the negative. I expose the negative and say, oh yeah, I see what's wrong. But a rocket scientist would do the same thing. He doesn't look what's right with his life. He looks what's wrong with his rocket. And when he finds what's wrong with his rocket, he says, that's right. Why didn't I see that before? And he's happy because he sees what's wrong with his rocket. When you're trying to fix your car, you're happy to find what's wrong with it. Why aren't you happy to find what's wrong with you? Because your ego. You're built of wrongs. If you find what's wrong, you go cuckoo. See? You're always hiding from the light so you don't have to see the wrong. The wrong is what you're made of. See, now when you meditate, you become objective to that.
Right.
Now, this is the rule of thumb, is that you must be willing to face reality. If you cannot be willing to face reality, you cannot be giving up the resentments that make you your own reality, that build your pride, that keep you in the dark, that make you think you are the cat's whiskers, the cat's meow.
Or
See?
excitability, like when you're achieving great success,
Yes.
you start getting, oh, I'm so excited.
You must give up excitement.
Mm-hmm.
But now, I'm flying in the face of custom.
Right.
They say, well, you know, wine, women, this guy doesn't like wine, women, and song. What's he living for?
That's correct.
That's what they say, don't they? Excitement's where it's at, man. Grab all the gusto you can, man.
But that's what
Have some weed, man. Because those people connect to their source of who they are by increasing their sensitivity. See? And the more they increase their sensitivity, the more progressively they put themselves under it. And pretty soon they put themselves under it, into the earth. It's a life that leads to death, because they must be more sensitive. The more sensitive they are, the more they gather their identity. And the more that gathering of their fulfillment, they call it fulfillment, F-O-O-L, fulfillment. The fulfillment of fools is through excitement, because it reinforces the pride. They think they are something, but they're not. It also blocks out the truth of what they are, the truth of their foolishness, the truth of a wasted life. It takes away their anxiety. It anesthetizes their conscience. At the same time, it fulfills the foolish existence. Now, this is your life. Some people are compatible. Some people are so wicked. Most people are so wicked. I'm frightened to say what percentage. It's much more than 60%. It's probably like 90%. So wicked that if it wasn't for laws that grant freedom of speech, First Amendment rights, etc., I would have been a dead man by now. Just by talking the way I'm talking, because I'm talking against the system. Because you are encouraged to react to drugs and to music and to art and to culture and to be excited and to be prideful. You're taught that but that's the way the Hitlers of our society, the secret Hitlers, the sweet Hitlers, the wicked Hitlers, they control you. You're all subject to various Hitlers, tyrants. Don't you know that you're subject to a tyrant and you're locked in by your judgment of them? They offer themselves up as a judgment. And the method of their madness is to make you judge them because you fall from grace, and then from that point onward you can never speak up to them because you're made of them. You'll bow and scrape because who you are will be from them. If you're a woman, you'll be attracted to a man that you hate. If you're a man, you'll be attracted to a woman that you hated like your mother, like you hated your mother. She'll finish off what your mother began. Boy, that was a good laugh. Yes, ma'am, right back. Yes, a little bit if you don't mind, because you're so short. And I don't mean to be put down.
I just wanted to ask you, I'm confused about when you're meditating. When I'm meditating, sometimes I want to ask God something,
Don't
and
ask him
then I
anything.
don't ask anything because
Don't ask anything.
then I just stay
Don't
in the
even
silence.
think that the scripture says it correctly when it says, your Father in heaven knoweth what you need before you ask.
Yeah.
Don't ask, because
Just-
you'll ask something stupid.
So then
See?
just silence is all you do, and
Just sit quietly and endeavor. The only thing you need to do is to endeavor to separate from your given or violated identity. To separate, because you're identified with you've so identified with this dark identity, this nature that sprung up in you through some early trauma, imprinting, that you've identified, excused it, defended it against the light. You see, because you, with it, both felt uncomfortable in the light, so it taught you how to do corrupt things, drink, smoke, carouse, fantasy, anything. It taught you how to get relief, how to get salvation from salvation, how to be shameless rather than guiltless. See what I mean, the difference? See the difference? And there are all kinds of shameless people out there teaching you how to be shameless and helping you to identify with them too. How to lose yourself by identifying with your body and your thoughts and your feelings and your flesh, so it takes away the pain, the sting of guilt. Don't you see, if you identify with your eyes and your ears and your feelings, that you fuse your soul with all your feelings, the sense of guilt disappears. The human side of you disappears, and then the inhuman side appears as an animal, a beast man, a devil's pawn, so to speak, you see, with a different spirit and a different outlook on things, and that it's wrong to feel guilty, like they says in the song, you know, love is not ever having to say you're sorry. Is that right?
That's right.
Love is not heavy. Isn't that ridiculous? Love is. No, nobody questioned that. It's weird. See? So you're identifying with your flesh and slipping into your thought stream, and the thought stream and the feelings which give rise to your thoughts are engendered. They are put in. They impinge on your senses, and they explode into thoughts in your mind, and you have no original thoughts. You make the same excuses. See? Everybody makes the same excuses, have the same fantasies. And they murder and kill and rape and violate and leave their wives and violate their wives and children and molest their kids. They two-time their spouses for all the same reasons. They get drunk for the same reasons. They snort for the same reasons. Exactly the same reasons. And yet they think they're unique. Everybody wants to be different. That was what makes them all the same. They all want to be different. You see a woman with a necklace, with putting some cheap jewelry on, looking in the mirror. Oh, isn't this different? Stupid witch. She wants to be different. She says, everybody's trying to be different. Everybody's the same, trying to be different. You want to be different? And realize that you're all the same. That you all have the same phobias and fears and guilts and excuses and reasonings, the same habits, the same fetishes and phobias, the same motives for doing wrong, the same fantasies exactly. And they all come from the same source, from below rather than from above. You see? Now we want to get rid of all this, don't we? We want to start hooking into a new thought system, but you can't do that because one thing prevents you: judgment based upon resentment. If you can realize anything in your life, if you had the power to wish anything and realize anything to change your life, excuse me, the thing that is most magical of all is realizing the magic of forgiveness. But this means, when you've understood it perfectly, it means that you've given up resentment. In a flash, you realize, my God, everything that's ever happened wrong to me, all the crazy things I've ever done, all the mad things I ever thought, all the flings and all the betrayals I've ever felt and done to other people, all the mad impulses I ever had, all the depressions and the guilt and the suicide, and the diseases and the multiple sclerosis and the cancer and the ulcers and the divorces, all the depressions, the hopeless fears, is all because I was separated from reality by judgment. And when that thought strikes you, when it thought strikes you, not because I said it, because suddenly you're willing to see it. At last, through the pain of all your suffering, which has led you to searching, which led you to appreciating the things that I'm saying. Not everybody can appreciate it. You know, half the people out there saying, this guy's crazy. They're drinking their beer and they're laughing their heads off. See? Cursing me out. And writing letters to the station to get me cut off the station. They can't stand it because the light has come. See? And 2,000 years ago, the light came in a man. And look what it did. You ever wondered why they want to kill him? He didn't want to hurt anybody. He just wanted to teach everybody not to hate everybody. Resent not evil, he said. It's what he meant. Resent not evil. Overcome it with good. Otherwise, you translate it, resist not evil, you're going to give in to evil. Resent it, you don't resist it with resentment. Because if you resent it, it gets you. And then the evil gets into you, and the good can't come through you and overcome the evil. You're separated from the good, the power. Now, when you understand, that's the key. That is the whole key for you. It's the beginning of a whole change of thinking. And you'll never be the same again as long as you live, and you'll never be subject to the wickedness again, because everywhere people are trying to get you to resent, to upset you, doing mean, cruel, little, vicious, dirty, little backstabbing things. They can't help themselves because they're subject to the system. In the attitude must be, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do, because they don't. They're totally unconscious of the cruelty that's coming through them. But the only way you make them conscious is not resenting it, or not reacting to it, or not judging it, and not being its victim, not having a lower consciousness than they have, so they feel like a king on a bigger mountain than you. Because you look inferior when you're the cause and you're the effect. Who are you? You're subject. But you show that you're not subject. You show that you're not subject, that you're coming from a different kingdom. And you hold it up, and they look at themselves when they look at you as if looking in a mirror. And it's all over but the music. You want to learn how to do that, ladies and gentlemen? Half an hour went pretty fast, didn't it? Viewers, please, if everyone understood what I was saying, everybody would be dropping their dope, and the insane asylums would open their doors, and all the problems of society would disappear, except AIDS. Talk about that some other time. Thanks for listening, and keep the program on the air with your support. Thanks for listening.
The foundation of human understanding teaches an observation exercise, often called meditation, which permits you to become objective toward your problems and allows your heartaches, bad habits, fears, and anxieties to be completely eliminated from your life without effort on your part. Until you have begun to practice this exercise, much of what you see and hear on the following program may be shocking and upsetting to you. But if you will listen calmly and with an open mind, you may discover the key to the peace of mind and joy for which you've been searching all of your life. And now, from the foundation of human understanding, here is Roy Masters.
Hello, welcome once again to the program, How to Control Your Negative Emotions. And we've been speaking about conscience, and we've spent 2 sessions on that subject, and I think we can go on for quite some time. And that if you lived according to what you know is right in your heart, most of you forgot what all that's about. Listen to the voiceless voice. You'd never have a conscience. Because I don't have a conscience, because I'm not in conflict with one. I'm in concert with my conscience, therefore my mind does not incriminate me. I live a free life, I'm carefree. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst, blessed are this. Remember the Beatitudes, all of the blessings? And the word blessed comes from the Old English blithe, or blithe, like blithe spirit, carefree. Carefree are those who hunger. Carefree are those who are searching for the truth, who mourn when they know they're wrong and admit they're wrong, for they shall be comforted. See? By the Spirit within them, restored. So there's no more conscience anymore. How do you get rid of your conscience? You drink, you smoke, you booze, you lose yourself in a novel. See, you take away the conflict and the anxiety, and you lose sight of shame. And every time you do that, it's like biting into the forbidden fruit. Because the forbidden fruits of life are used to forget your conscience. See, you can't be an ego. You can't have an ego, a pridefulness, and have a conscience bothering you and breaking you down at the same time. You can't function. See, the ego is a man playing God. And he has to be free from the rules of the universe, the universal rules, the moral rules for man, the purpose for that God shaped man and put in him his will and purpose originally. See? And that's what loving God is. You love God or you love your own self. You love to be God. But in order to be God, you have to not know what he wants. You have to reject, rebel against your conscience. You must not want to know what right and wrong is. You must forget that, because the ego can't grow in that light of knowing. Otherwise it knows itself as a nothing, shriveled up, coward failure, disgusting animal degenerate being that it is, inheriting death as part of life. It cannot do it. So in order to be who we are, and we bite into the various poisons. See? The poisoned apple, which is loaded with suggestion and excitement to disobey. And then we forget what reality. To become who we are, we start to evolve this self. But this self is in conflict because you can't put the light out. There comes the light back, the understanding, the wordless understanding. We feel a grinding in our spirit, a friction in the spirit. And what do? We reach for more forgetfulness, to forget the truth and to remember that we are the truth. See? To anesthetize our conscience. And every time we do that, we have less understanding and we feel free. We're a coffee achiever. You know those coffee achievers? The now generation and the coffee achievers. And so you drink your cocaine and you drink your nicotine and you inhale it and you anesthetize your conscience. And then when you anesthetize, you feel free. You feel free and guiltless. And you have the inertia. You have the inertia, not inertia, but the inertia, the motion towards the things you want when you're drinking, imbibing the spirit of the fruit of pride, the stimulation, the temptation to exist. You see what I mean? Yes, ma'am.
If food can dull your mind and your conscience, so to speak,
It can.
what about sweets and
Oh.
bad food? Now that is what does it, right? But you have to eat, so
No,
isn't
any
there
food will do it. Even a
moderation?
whole wheat sandwich can do it.
Because you're
All
getting
food. Do you remember the original? We're getting away from conscience, but it's okay. See, I am very esoterically organized in my thinking, and I see everything in these shades, no shades of gray, but black and white. Man originating through temptation.
So you're saying
And food was the original conditioning factor, you see, to which men are addicted to go on being prideful and to anesthetize their conscience. You see, but you see, Christ was brilliant. Do you know how brilliant he was? Do you know that he only left one ritual? Do you remember I said about food the other day that every time you eat food, you can't separate the food from the hypnotic suggestion that's buried into it. See?
Right.
You can't. Every time you eat something, your conscience disappears. You feel comfort. Instead of feel conflict, you feel comfort. And this comforted person goes on to live longer and become wronger.
How
You
does
see?
one know when to stop eating then?
Well, listen to what I'm saying. If you let me finish the point,
Oh, sure.
the answer will come.
Okay.
Yeah, but answer the question if it's not complete in a minute.
Okay.
Now, Christ knew that the separation from God to be one's own God had something to do with food, forbidden fruit. Of all the trees of the fruit, a garden you can eat, except the knowledge of the good, the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, you may not. For they shall eat, your eyes shall be opened, and you shall become as gods, knowing good from evil, right? Something like that. And the inner eye is closed, the outer eye is open, and we become sensual, and who we are comes from more and more knowledge, more and more food, more to support the rebellion, to put the conscience to sleep, to awaken out the sense of who we are, to fulfill who we are, to give motivation, to reinforce the suggestions that we can really be. See what I mean? Mm-hmm. Now, but Christ was a very conscious being. He knew that every time people ate, they reinforced, no matter how humble the food. They could not help but put their conscience to sleep, and they were forever separated from the ground of their being. And that's why wise men, they fasted. They didn't fast because it was good for their body. They fasted so they could understand themselves better.
And they fasted so no one else would know. They didn't go around saying, I'm fasting,
Well, you
I'm
get
fasting.
pridefulness. You get pride
Right,
when
they would just
you
be
get
quiet
support.
and do it.
But I'm making the point.
Okay.
He only left one ritual.
Okay.
Christ only left one ritual. The church is loaded with rituals, all hypnotic, none of his making. Christ was as free as a bird, and nothing is instituted in the church was from him. One ritual: do this, breaking bread, drinking the fruit wine, do this remembering me. You know what? He represented redemption, the message that God is going to reconcile man to himself, right? He really did. Therefore, he carried with him a certain power that if you believed in who he was, then you're going to do what he says, and you're going to believe in what he says. Now, remember, original sin had something to do with doubting God, forgetting your conscience, forgetting the purpose for which you to do your own thing, to become your own God. So it had something to do with forgetting God and remembering yourself as one, right? It's suggestions inherent in food. He said, he knew that every time somebody ate, you try going home and see if you can remember it till you get home, and open the refrigerator, write it on your hand if you like, write it on a piece of paper, stick it in the middle of your forehead, right in front of your nose, and go in the refrigerator and start to eat something. And even though what I'm about to say is written on the you'll forget even to read it. You'll disappear when you eat. Did you know that's the reason why people have to eat so much? It's because only while they're chewing the food, their brain is hypnotized and comforted. You forget the guilt. And when you swallowed it, then the conscience comes back again, and the fat, of course, has a factor in reminding you that you've done something wrong and foolish, and it doesn't look good on your pride. But then you have to eat again. Why? Because it anesthetizes your conscience and comforts you again.
May I ask something, please?
And it fills you with the wrong spirit. I haven't finished the point yet. I know. Forgive me. Do you see what Christ did, though? Understanding this, he said, eat this remembering me. That is a very counter-hypnotic. It is, it's counter-hypnotic. It breaks the spell of the suggestion. If you can eat food and eat it quietly, eat simple food, not stimulating food, not specially spiced food, which is all designed to enhance the hypnotic value of things.
Thank you.
Follow that?
Yes.
It's got to be simple food, and if you eat it, being conscious of what you eat. The purpose of eating food is to be unconscious, to take you away from conscious. That's the only way it's going to give you comfort. If it can poison your conscience, see, anesthetize your conscience. And that's why it has to be more elaborate, more stimulated, and that's why we're getting bigger and fatter and uglier, because we're eating not for our bodies, but to anesthetize the soul. And the more you do that, the more you anesthetize the soul, the more you're rejecting the truth. You're using the food salvation rather than the salvation. And every time you use the food salvation, you're rejecting. It's almost like you're reenacting the same scene in the garden. I don't want to admit I'm wrong. See? I don't want to hear what you have to say. I'll feel okay.
The evil can get into you that way, though. The more you anesthetize your conscious, the more
slips
the
in.
evil slips in.
The
and
evil
controls
suggestions,
you.
your whole life is controlled by suggestions that slip in into your unaware state. And you don't understand. It's the spirit of your mother. Your mother made a big thing with food, didn't she? And if you didn't eat her food, she'd get all upset because she couldn't put her will into you. But it wasn't her will.
Yes.
It was her mother's will. But it wasn't her mother's will. It was her mother's will.
Eve's will.
And whose will was it?
Eve's.
All the way back to the garden, it wasn't even Eve's will on earth as it is in hell.
Satan's will.
It's keeping all those suggestions and all of the identity and who we are alive through the eating process.
Right.
See? See? Yes. Who?
Thank you.
Well, there's a lady way back there.
This is so interesting because I know as a child I was aware of my conscience. I mean, I think children know right from wrong. They know when they've done right and they've done wrong.
They do.
When in my teenage years I became a Christian, a born-again, so to speak, Christian, and have been one for about 20 years, I found I lost touch with my conscience because it wasn't taught. The spirit realm and the soul realm was taught, and there was no relationship between that and conscience.
All intellectual stuff. It was all intellectual, parroting back verse and chapter.
So I found myself kind of in a situation that wasn't necessarily all negative, but it was like a dream state, or there was no correlation. And so therefore I could see why people might be more overweight in the church scene because they might use food as an escape, or they might also use emotion, the charismatic realm, all these various escapes, rather than just listening to.
But if the church
conscience.
leaders would teach what I'm teaching right now, they wouldn't have a church. See, the whole concept, the purpose of government, the business of government is not people, it's government. The business of medicine isn't people, it's medicine. All the powers that be that want to go on being the powers that be, that discovered the power of your need. See, in your fallen state, you have need. You have sick, so you need a doctor. Once the doctor comes into existence, or like once the drug pusher comes into existence because you have a need, you've got a conscience. You're guilty. He rises, he invents something to sniff or to snort to take it away. And the more you do that, the worse you become. You live longer, become wronger, so you need 2 snorts. Aspirins are the same way. So you see, there now, once they learn that's an easy living, to make a living on your dying. See? Once they find an existence in that, and power in that, becoming like a god, ministering to your weaknesses and failings, they're reluctant to give it up, and the church is the same way. The church has a history of horrible cruelty and persecutions and murder. And even now, it's wall-to-wall confusion. The people are kept like little children, ministered to, by some weirdo. And I can see those guys don't know what they're talking about. Can't you see that Tammy Baker doesn't know what the hell she's talking about? Can't you see all that phony baloney with loving God? But there are people who can't see through that, because to them religion is the opiate. It's an excitement, it's a hype, it's a lot of words and ideas and identifying with pretty and wealthy and charismatic people. See? And they identify and they get a sense of fantasy self, a fantasy happiness, an illusory sense of well-being by identifying with what seems to be happy there. Because everything that people, the ego is, the only happiness that the ego can ever have is through some external sensory stimuli. You're happy when you're munching, you're happy when you're drinking, you're happy when you don't know you're unhappy. See what I mean? See? And that's not really, and so that it could be excitement, it could be a music, it could be caught up in religiosity, religiousizing, like exercising, jazzercising. You get caught up with that sort of thing, and the sole purpose is to put your conscience to sleep, to give you a sense of relief, of conscience, but then to live longer and to become wronger and to become dependent upon more of those. That's why the churches have grown top-heavy with pomp and ceremony, because you get bored with the old ones. You have to keep adding new ones. See?
So it goes back to the same situation even in the Old Testament where the people wanted a king. They never needed one. If they'd listened to their conscience back then, they would have needed judges.
That's right. Israel was a unique state because it was a nation of people in whom the God was in the midst of every soul. And we have to have that back again if we are to survive, because governments cannot help us. They cannot save us. They can't even help the poor. The more they help the poor, the more poor we've got to help. And you can't help the sick, because the more you service the sick, well, the more sick they are. You've got more sick people because they live longer and become wronger. And now you're digging deeper into the archives, into your intellect, digging deeper into your soul, dredging up more spirit of knowledge, more cleverness, more cunning. Look at the AIDS thing. This could destroy us. This could take everything we have just to keep those swines alive. Oh, shouldn't have said that. It could kill us trying to keep them alive, you know what I mean? Yes. Yes, gentleman back there.
Hi. Question has to do with, I've been in sales for many years, and yet I'm not an outgoing person. Conflict it comes up sometimes, is I feel, what am I doing, what I'm doing? And yet if in my mind, it's like, this is something I should be doing.
Well, that's not, I don't understand. It's a very confusing approach. You'll have to do better than that. I can't follow you.
Well, the question is, am I listening? Is my feelings, is that my conscience? Or is
I don't
my
understand what you're saying. Sorry, I'm very sorry. I don't see the point you're making. It's not clear. I don't mean to be rude or anything, but it just didn't come across very clear. Maybe somebody else knows. There's a lady right over there.
In the prior segment, you were talking about the feeling you get in the solar plexus.
Yes.
And so I'd like to kind of go back to that and ask what you think about this. I've, in the past couple of years, made a lot of progress in dealing with my rage and fear and resentment in meditation and in working out the actual anger that's in it. It seems like it's actually, it just overcomes me in a meditative state, and I've actually just lay down on the floor and beat on the ground and get that anger out.
Yes, that's
and it's like it lives in my body.
See, what happens is you've had a lot of suppressed rage.
Yeah, very much, and a great deal of fear.
Yes, a lot of suppressed rage.
Yes.
And it's coming out. You've been pushing it down, and it's just coming to the surface, and you're just going to have to allow that to happen for a while.
So that's okay.
Yeah,
I've never heard you.
I won't say it's okay. It's just okay with me. Make it, sanction it. I'm saying it needs. It has to. One of the things that I teach people sometimes is, especially wimps. People, any wimps here?
I was.
They have this suppressed rage, and we're changing the subject just a little bit. It's okay. We'll come around back to our conscience in a minute. But they've become somewhat psychotic. Tend to be very withdrawn and quiet. You can almost, I can pick out people like that, in this audience. I could just pick out by the look on your face. You have that nice, sweet, benign look. It's like an innocence, and it's blank. There's no character on your face. It looks very innocent and sweet. Everybody would love you. You know what I mean? Just the look. So you don't offend anybody. It's I won't offend anybody look. And I accept everybody look, And I teach those people to get angry first, because the process of development is you can't, if you suppress a rage, you don't know you have it. How many people in this room have just discovered that they have anger and resentment? It takes you years to discover that you think you're a nice person, but this nice person that you are is not really a nice person at all, but it's a fake person. It's a person who tries to avoid upsetting conditions by being nice to everybody. You don't know how to deal with anger, and you don't want to be upset, so you go ahead. Before you try to please people before anybody could make a demands on you, so it seems to be your own idea. You try to keep peace, and you're very condescending. And of course, when people take advantage of you, as they always do, because they think you're such a nice person, they give you all kinds of favors. They've got all kinds of favors they want you to do for them. Then you end up feeling used, and you start to resent the fact they take advantage of you. And there's that's you, isn't it? Repressed rage. And this rage grows up in it, but you can't say anything but you smile. You look like such a friendly.
The fear.
Huh?
The fear was there. This was in the marriage.
With your husband?
The fear of showing the anger.
Right. So then you do so much for that person because anything if they look at you crossways, it might trigger that anger. And you don't know how, you try to keep yourself from adding more anger to anger because it'll just brim over. It cause you to have a stroke or something. You don't know what's going to happen to you. So you tend to suppress the anger and be nice to everybody and pleasing and condescending to everybody, and you spoil everybody, and they take advantage of it, and you resent it. They haven't done anything mean to you. They just lay too many obligations on you.
And then you ruin your kids.
And you see, and then they start making demands on you because you think they're such a wonderful mother, and you spoil them. They can't do anything for themselves, so then you do it for them, and then they get weaker and they can't help themselves, and they get into trouble, and they're always calling upon mother, and mother feels resentful first. Then comes the compensation for the resentment, the false love, the condescendingness, and it goes round and round. So what I'm trying to say to you is, you've got to say, "No, damn it!" Right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can use all the choice swear words you like. So,
I've
but
had
why do
to-
I say that? Because you've got to have some kind of expression.
I've had to re-experience in meditation those things that caused the rage and the anger.
Yes.
And see them
But it's
again.
resentment, though.
Yes.
But see,
Well, and what caused the resentment? The whole thing, and get the anger out.
Right, but yeah.
Re-experiencing it.
But right now, in everyday experiences, you're always meeting people who parent you. For instance, if your parents laid this trip on you when you were young, set you up for this sort of thing, it's always parents. Nearly always parents. Or a parent substitute. See? Then you're going to be dealing with your husband like it was your mother or something, you know what I mean? Or you're going to be dealing with an authority with the same kind of resentment and rage and the same kind of bowing and scraping and condescending and going along with their ideas and their will, not really wanting to, resenting it all along, but smiling while you're doing it like a good little Christian, right?
It was his authority.
Let's
It was
see.
authority that did it to me.
It's authority.
Yeah,
Because
and-
what is the ultimate authority? Is your conscience. I'm glad I came back to that one. That is what, but people in this world, they've been robbed of their conscience. They've been made to doubt what they know is right in their heart. And they're now serving a wrong God. Now, when your mother and father had a mother and father, when they came into the world, and the school system and the church system and everything else, it took them away from their conscience. It made them obedient to the system, the state, the family, authority, the father, authority, mother, authority figure. And you've been cowing down to that resentfully ever since, because there's something, you see, the very fact that they stand there unholy in the place of the holy, standing over a little tiny child. See, before you even, as you came out of the womb, and it wasn't long after that, before they claimed you and set you up in a conditioned reflex before the response that you couldn't deal with. But now that you're old enough and wise enough, I can teach you. I can show you how to come back to transfer your allegiance to your conscience, so that your conscience is your guide. But the first rule of thumb is you must forgive your parents. You must not look at them as authority. They're not your authority. They were originally, like I am for my children, standing there as a tutor, a guide, a regent for a king, as to tutor these little princes, so to know who their real father is, to listen to their conscience. And that is the art of parenting, not being their authority, but preserving their integrity, that which they came into the world with, and teaching them that the world, they must not respond to the pressures, otherwise they become subject to that authority, because all sin makes you subject to authority, right? So you see, we can continue this tomorrow night. Well, we've got 1 minute. Hold the applause. We've got 1 minute just to those of you listening in Los Angeles or watching in Los Angeles can hear me on radio KIEV every day, Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. And if you would like to continue to watch these programs in the evening, it costs megabucks. And right now we're paying half. We've got this week, only this week, after 3 and 4 months, we're up to paying half of the cost. And it's killing me. So if you have a conscience, let it be your guide. Thank you. And in a few minutes, the announcer will give you the information of how to listen to your conscience and overcome the emotional stress of life. Thank you for listening, and join us again.
The foundation of human understanding teaches an observation exercise, often called meditation, which permits you to become objective toward your problems and allows your heartaches, bad habits, fears, and anxieties to be completely eliminated from your life without effort on your part. Until you have begun to practice this exercise, much of what you see and hear on the following program may be shocking and upsetting to you. But if you will listen calmly and with an open mind, you may discover the key to the peace of mind and joy for which you've been searching all of your life. And now, from the foundation of human understanding, here is Roy Masters.
Welcome once again to the program, How to Control Your Emotions, and we're heavy into the subject of conscience, saying that if you didn't respond to pressure, you wouldn't have a conscience, because the conscience is evidence that you've listened to the wrong God. That's all it is. You're made of conscience, or you're made of the temptation that takes you away from it. Who was it that said, all who sin are slaves? You become addicted to the motivation that pulled you away from the ground of your being, and it becomes the ground of your being. See? In other words, if I told my son not to ride a bicycle, if he holds faith with me, then I love him. There's a relationship. But if a little boy comes along and says, don't listen to your dad, and then he goes and rides his bicycle, listens to the little boy, what's happened? He's broken faith with me. He's become subject to the influence of the little boy. Isn't that what you're trying to avoid? Your children being influenced by the world you live in? But now you see they can't say no. Poor Nancy Reagan, she means well, but she hasn't the foggiest idea what she's doing. Just say no. You can't say no, because you can't say no to sin. The slave can't say no to its master. If you live in East Germany, you can't say no. You can only say no to East Germany when you live in West Germany, right? That sort of thing. See? No, you can't touch me. I'm all right, you're all wrong. You can't do that in West Germany, East Germany, can you? So I'm telling you, there's a West Germany and East Germany in your head. And the parameters And there's a boundary which you must not cross. Cross to your peril. Cross and you never get back. Listen, it's much easier to corrupt somebody than correct them. Did you know that? It's so easy to corrupt this whole nation. And then the corruptors have a heyday, because then you need the very thing that's corrupted you. Because what corrupts you, you also need to sustain you. You understand that? And what do you need to sustain? Why do you need it to sustain? Because mostly to help you deny your conscience. So you don't have to admit you're wrong. That's what drugs are all about. You're always right on a high, and you're never low. Without those drugs to help you deny reality, you're the reality. You feel like you can walk off a building and not be hurt. You feel invulnerable. You feel like you're God. You don't know you're wrong, so you're right. And you're poisoned. See that? Now, this society is controlled now. This whole society is controlled by people who have corrupted us. And now all our kids can't say no to anything. They can't say no to the peer pressure because they're slaves of the things that's taken away from the very power to resist. You've got to get back to your conscience. You've got to get back to West Germany. You've got to cross that line. Who is there to teach you? Who is there to show you where you can cross that border? How to get over the wall. There's a wall there now and you can't get back. You're tied to the world. You're influenced by it. Once you start being influenced, you can't stop. And you know the reason why you can't stop? Because you don't know how to be sorry. The little boy has to come back to his daddy and say, sorry, Dad. But he can't do that. His pride won't let him. And the pride is made, and most of the pride is made out of what corrupted him. He is the brainchild, the extension of what corrupted him. He is a little bit of that prideful spirit. He is recreated in the spirit of pride, and that's why there's a part of you that finds it very difficult to say, I'm wrong, I'm sorry. See? Is that right, ladies and gentlemen? You can't, you make excuses. There's a profuse series of excuses and rationalizations. Your mind starts to wander, to drink, to smoke, to escape. You can't sit still. You're afraid to be by yourself because that's where Daddy is. See? That's where Daddy catches up with you. That's when you discover that you're a failure, and your pridefulness doesn't want to see that it's a failure. It wants to be somebody. See? It started out to be someone, and why can't it be someone? It's stubborn. It keeps renewing the ancient contract. Follow that? Now, questions. Stand up, please.
Referring back to your last program, you mentioned the ritual that Jesus had about eating food and remembering Him. I see its clear application to cigarette smoking, which is the only vice I have left and I want to get rid of for health reasons.
Very simple to do that.
Well, I'm aware of your objective method.
We had a program here one day where I helped a person to stop smoking just by watching the cigarette and being conscious of what they're doing. You see, the purpose of smoking a cigarette is to poison, is to put your conscience to sleep, to have a hypnotic effect on your, a dulling effect, an anesthetic effect on your conscience. Now, if you take the same cigarette, fully conscious, in other words, remain aware of what you're doing. So there's a tendency when you eat food is to anesthetize, to lose yourself. It's so delicious, and pretty soon there's a hypnotic state and you start to feel secure and comfortable. But as soon as you stop eating, the food hits your stomach, and you look in the mirror and you're 50 pounds overweight, the conscience comes back again, and then you have to eat. And now you have to eat to forget the guilt of eating, like you have to drink to forget the guilt of drinking, because eating is a denial, drinking is a denial, smoking is a denial. It helps to anesthetize the conscience, to keep your ego feeling secure, that everything is all right and nothing is wrong, right? Now, this is to preserve your ego self, and when you're not ready to face the truth, you can't smoke or eat in any other way. Follow that? You cannot smoke you cannot smoke. The reason why you smoke is to put yourself to sleep, to alter your state of consciousness, to produce a hypnotic state chemically. But remember, hypnosis, or the state that we all live in, is an altered state of mind, hypnotic, like hypnosis, and you do not feel asleep. You're just not aware. Your anxiety, which is the wordless word, there's something inside you trying to communicate with you, but all you can feel it is an anxiety or a grinding of spirits. like two things rubbing together, feeling the pain, see? So what you do is take one of those things that rub away. If you were standing in the middle of a court, and there's this big judge and jury standing there, all of a sudden, and you're feeling very guilty, and the judgment is passed on you, and all of a sudden a big wind came along, blew the judge away and the jury away, and you feel free. There's no one to condemn me. And that's what you're doing with your cigarette smoking. But if you smoke a cigarette, and with a pure intent to defeat its purpose, just be conscious. Suddenly the cigarette will start to taste what it's really like. See, when you smoke cigarettes to produce the hypnotic state, you're not even aware that you're smoking half the time, because you're not aware. You're not even aware that you're drinking most of the time. The alcoholic doesn't even know he's an alcoholic, because he doesn't know. See, he defeats awareness, and every time he smokes, he defeats awareness until there is no more awareness. He doesn't even, well, I don't drink very much. He don't remember. He's not aware of it. He's not aware of his own foolishness. See?
Roy, I've been aware of that program. I saw the program. And I practiced that technique. What it enabled me to do is, when I'm doing it, to smoke slower, okay, not smoke so fast, and maybe not finish the entire cigarette, down to the nub.
I could live with it.
Well, the thing is I have, we'll say, this intuitional flash. Maybe I'm weird or something, but I have this feeling that if I can get to the root cause as to why I started smoking to begin with, okay, it will go away. It's like something is programmed.
But you see, my friend, you've got to go back the way you came. If you're a drunk and you keep drinking, you keep drinking for one reason, so as not to see what the problem is. You see, when a person drinks, he has a guilt. Now, he may not have, his first guilt may not have been drinking. His first guilt may have been some other place. His first failure and his first guilt. But he found a way to relieve that guilt by drinking. He couldn't handle it, couldn't function in life, so he found the traditional way of drinking to get rid of the guilt. But now he starts to drink to get rid of the guilt. He's really getting rid of his understanding of what the problem is at the same time. So he can never solve the problem because he's getting rid of the understanding, which is the conscience in the form of guilt. You see? Now, if you keep on drinking, it only means one thing. It means that you don't want to understand. It means you want to put your mind to sleep. You want to put your conscience to sleep because you can't really understand a problem so long as you're soused with drink. You're pickled with drink. There's got to be a point where you give up the drinking and allow enough space between now and the next drink for you to figure out what the problem, why you're drinking. Here we have the problem. Now we drink to deny the problem, the truth of it, that we're a failure, whatever's wrong with us. Now we drink to forget the guilt of drinking, because every time you drink, you're denying God. You're denying truth. That's original sin. Now you're adding sin to sin. So that's why the alcoholic can't stop drinking, and the smoker can't stop smoking, because now he's not only smoking to forget a problem. He's now smoking to forget the guilt of smoking. In addition to that, problems are piling up. Anxieties as a result of not dealing with life properly, and stresses properly, and failing to deal with life, adds to the pain of conscience and adds to the reason why he needs to smoke. But a time has to come, sooner or later, when he realizes this is ridiculous. And now, at that point, he can lay down the moment a person wants to face reality, he discovers he has the power to lay down the poison. In other words, it is the first obvious wrong. We've got a lot of wrongs in the world, a lot of subtle wrongs, all leading up to that one. But obviously, this thing that you're doing right this moment is the ever-present sin. It's the manifestation of the wrong, and the wrong becoming wronger, if you follow what I mean. So now, here is the sin. It's obviously stupid to smoke. Now, anybody who has a conscience can see people who smoke and drink and see how stupid it is, but the person himself cannot. Or he might even feel macho. Even sophisticated. Right? You see? But they feel, like the Marlboro Man. Tough. They get an image of themselves smoking the cigarette. Even women who watch the fashion shows, they see these beautiful girls wearing rags and all kinds of stuff and lipstick and silly, stupid thing. Those women look beautiful. You couldn't make them ugly if you tried. You know what I mean? But now they imagine that they put this lipstick on and the eyeshadow on, they imagine themselves to be just as beautiful as these beautiful girls. They're not. They're as ugly as sin. But they imagine themselves, they've identified, see? When you smoke a cigarette, you feel like the Marlboro Man. See? You feel like you're tough and somebody, and you don't see that you're nobody and weak. Follow? But the point is, you're denying truth. And so therefore, the searching soul has, in order for him to start to explore the reasons why you smoke and drink, you must start with the first things first. The realization must be strong enough to make you see, what am I doing this? This is wrong. And to remain conscious of that wrong and watch the tendency to escape from knowing that wrong and resist it stoutly for that first time. When you do that, your cigarette smoking will disappear, and now the reasons why you smoke start to make themselves available to you. Now you start to address that problem and not run from it and not excuse it. You see a whole bunch of excuses. When you meditate, by the way, let's say you've stopped smoking now because your conscience, the light which is your conscience, starts to bear down and dry up. You know how I use an expression, when a cow does a little doo-doo and the sun comes out and dries it up. It doesn't do anything. The sun just dries that little cow patty up, and it drives away the smell, pardon the vernacular, and it all of a sudden it crumbles it into fine earth, and the flowers begin to grow through it, doesn't the grass grows through it. See, it turns it from something ugly into something beautiful, something dead into something alive. And it's the same thing with you look at when you start to be willing to be aware of yourself and not escape that awareness. That moment happens and you start to be conscious. Sometimes it happens just spontaneously with people. They start to notice the cigarette tastes funny because they're becoming conscious. There's something about their soul has been reaching secretly and mystically up to the light. And now they're beginning to be aware, and the very fact they're seeing themselves as others see them. And there's something about that, a light that they're allowing in that moment that's driving away the smell, the smoke. See? And suddenly now they start to see things more clearly. Oh, I see I'm being mean to my wife. I see I'm angry with my father or my mother. See? Or my kids, and that's when they're making me smoke. Oh, now he sees that. Now he sees that goes away. You following what I'm saying?
Yeah, but, can I run
Did I talk too much?
Well, can I run something back on you?
Okay.
I see your general application. What I want to pluck out of it is what's applicable to my case, and run it back and see if I understand it.
All right.
It seems that what you were saying, at least to me, is that my original reason for starting smoking is irrelevant today because it may be different as to why I'm smoking right now.
Yes.
And the only thing I related to is I'm consciously aware, because cigarettes don't get rid of guilt for me. I don't have those problems, and
You wouldn't smoke them if they
So
didn't.
the only thing that I related to is then you said that I know it's a stupid thing, but yet I'm doing it. So the only thing that I can figure out is my smoking the cigarette, realizing it's a stupid thing, I'm killing my health, reinforces my need for the next cigarette.
Right. Because the guilt makes you need to want poison.
Because it does nothing else for me. I'm not running away from reality with it, I'm totally conscious while I'm smoking.
So what's the question? I hear what you're saying.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get at. That's why it drives me crazy, because
but so you are
it's not making me unconscious.
Listen, you are I can pick up you're a very hyper person. You're very wound up all the time. And you may have very great difficulty giving up smoking because you are very, very emotional. You get irritable, upset, annoyed, aggravated, and you run on that kind of energy. You'll see? Who says that? Who says yes? Is that his wife or something? You are the same way. You'll see there's a connection between sin and smoking or drinking. And what is the sin? Anything that all that is not of faith, the Bible says, is sin. But I can make it more explicit for you. Sin is anything that separates you and makes you doubt what you know is right. See? Now, when you become wrong, when you sin, let's say you get upset, that's a sin. Don't ever think that it isn't. It's not normal to be upset. Doesn't everybody get upset? Someone does something wrong to you? No. The purpose for people doing wrong things is to upset you, and upset implies what it means, to reverse. See, when you're upset, you're turned around, so that instead of your conscience, you're flowing from the mountain to the sea, so that the flow of motivation is from within out. You're cut off from the within, and other people's wills start to act on your mind as if it was your own will. Then comes the excuses. Who understands that? So you do, don't you? The excuses is the truth, is the failing person's truth. For instance, when you become upset, you've actually obeyed the source of your intimidation. You've obeyed. You've disobeyed your conscience. You can't serve two masters. So one of the purposes of the world around you, one of the manipulative ploys, is to cause you to become resentful and angry and judgmental. That's the word. To fill you full of pride by giving you something to hate and to judge, something to irritate you, and to feed that pride of yours. But the moment your pride gets fed a temptation, a juicy morsel of temptation, it comes away from its power. It obeys. It starts to obey the spirit of that temptation. See that? There's temptation on the outside. Temptation wants you to do what it wants you to do on earth as it is in hell. Conscience, your own sense of knowing. There's an intelligence or spirit that wants you to do what he wants you to do on earth as it is in heaven. Now there's a tug of war going on, a war for your soul. One of the tricks of people to get you to deny truth and to doubt yourself and to disconnect you from your true self and to make you subject to that other person, the will on earth as it is in hell, and to put in you the kind of person it wants you to be, to serve its purpose, to create its kind of person, beast man, devil's pawn sort of thing. It's resentment, your response to its temptation is your hostility and your hate and your judgment. That separates you from your conscience. So you'll notice, ladies and gentlemen, I'm only dealing with one temptation: hate, resentment, being upset, annoyed, aggravated, irritated. It separates you from the power to overcome evil with good. Jesus said, resist not evil, overcome it with good. Now, he couldn't possibly mean it because he wants you to resist evil. There's a translation error. This is how it should read. Resent not evil, overcome it with good. Because the minute you resent it or hate it, you're separated from the power to overcome it with good. Who understands that? You're good. So now, when you are resentful towards a person, you've surrendered to evil unawares. That's when you feel the conflict. That's when you start to feel guilty. That's when you start to feel the rub of conscience, the sense of failing, the sense of emptiness, the sense of futility, going nowhere, defeat, depression. And that's when you start to smoke, when you start to eat, when you start to drink, to snort coke, right? That's when you start to, the spirit of pride rises in you, doesn't want to admit you're wrong. Because temptation pulls you away from the spirit of humility, puts into you a spirit of pride. And the spirit of pride cannot admit it's wrong. It always wants to be right. Because pride is a man wanting to be God. None of us like to admit we're wrong. Once we become wrong, we don't want to admit we are wrong. Therefore we smoke, we drink, we go to church to maintain a sense of right and never feel like to admit we're wrong. See? And we're in love with the things that make us feel right. We're addicted, but they have terrible ascendancy over our minds and spirits and destiny. Yes?
I have a question relating to children, I think, and correcting. You were speaking of that earlier. And when you never been corrected the proper way, how can you give
Who has?
Excuse me?
I said, who has?
Oh, okay. How can you relate something like that to your children? if a lot of times I don't know how to correct them in the right way because I've never been corrected.
You want to know how to do it? I can tell you in a few words.
I don't know the answers at the time when something is happening.
Give me an example.
My daughter, I called her in for dinner. Her little friend is saying, don't listen to your mother. Tell her you don't want to eat dinner.
Sounds like the little example I just gave.
Yeah, earlier, yeah, trying to, and I didn't know quite how to deal with that because the other child was the same age as my daughter, who is only 3.5, and she was 4. I mean, we're talking about...
You mean to say you don't know how to deal with that? You're in bad shape.
Well, okay, yes, maybe I am. And I didn't know what to say to the little girl and what to say to my daughter.
But I'll tell you what you did. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why you don't know, shall I? Because it upset you.
It did.
See? And what now? You're the perfect classic example of what I said. What happens when you get upset? You get turned around.
Mm-hmm.
Then you forget this common sense thing to do. The common sense and the strength which flows from it. You see, that is what confidence is. Confideo. Together with fidelity with God, right? It's a unity. So, but there are forces, even in the 3-year-old kid, operating there that can throw you for a loop and upset you. That's why you need something called patience. There's a scripture that is so pretty. I'm not very good at scripture, so forgive me if I don't know exactly, but it reads something like, "Count it a blessing, brethren, when you meet with various or divers temptations. For the trying of your faith, knowing what you know is right in your heart, worketh patience." The trying of your, what you know is right, faith. I'm adding a few words. The trying of your faith, which is really a sense of strong knowing of what right and wrong is without without learning it from anybody, right? Intuitive. The trying of your faith worketh patience. Patience is no response, no obedience to stresses and pressures and temptations. Nobody can get inside you when you're patient. When you're full of faith and you're full of patience. And when you're full of patience, you're full of faith. And if you're not that, you're full of something else. Right? Now, you're not patient. You are not patient, and your impatience reverses the natural authority, the natural effect on your child. See, I've been endlessly patient with my children. Guess what? They love me. They see me as authority. They don't see the rest of the world as authority. They see the authority in their father as a real authority, something that is really their friend. So they know to come to me and not to trust anybody else. They know by the same conscience growing in them not to trust anybody else, because they see by the same conscience growing in them that is in me that is not there to trust. They see it. You naturally are a natural authority. If you be patient, love will show through. But you're impatient, then something else shows through that is not a natural authority to those children. And you drive them away. You make them rebel, or you make them conform. But then if you can make them conform, so can somebody else. We'll continue this serial tomorrow night. We've got one more session. Thank you. And I hope that you'll learn the meditation as a little technique that in a few moments they'll be flashing on the screen. A book, How Your Mind Can Keep You Well. I've got another book too, How to Control Your Emotions, but it's really, this is the primer. As we say in England, the primer, because it's the first one. So please write to the Foundation for the material and keep us on the air with your contributions, but the nice way is to order the materials first. And then maybe you'll want to keep us on the air with your contributions. It's tough. Thank you very much, and join us on the next program.
The foundation of human understanding teaches an observation exercise, often called meditation, which permits you to become objective toward your problems and allows your heartaches, bad habits, fears, and anxieties to be completely eliminated from your life without effort on your part. Until you have begun to practice this exercise, much of what you see and hear on the following program may be shocking and upsetting to you. But if you will listen calmly and with an open mind, you may discover the key to the peace of mind and joy for which you've been searching all of your life. And now, from the foundation of human understanding, here is Roy Masters.
Hello, welcome once again to the program, How to Control Your Negative Emotions, and we're on the subject of conscience, that listening to it is vital. I'm saying that everything that's wrong with society, everything that's wrong with any one of you, your lives, your fortune, your failings, your sickness, your disease, your family, your anxieties, your guilt, is because you don't listen to your conscience. Now, you've got some numbskull, lots of intellectual numbskulls who listen to a different conscience than ours, who says, well, if you get everybody listening to their conscience, we're going to have chaos. No one will obey traffic lights, and everybody will decide his own right and wrong. It just shows you how crazy that person is. Conscience makes us all children of the same light. So, you know, I'd be a bricklayer and you can be a candlestick maker and butcher and baker, but we'd have the same sense of decency and honor and what goodness and fairness and justice is. And it would be expressed with equanimity toward one another. And we'd have a beautiful world. Yes, I stop at a traffic light because I see it's put there for my benefit. You have to have a little regulation here. See, you know, everybody listening to their own conscience doesn't mean to say that everybody's going to do whatever the hell they want. That's what they're doing now. Everybody going their own way, doing whatever they want. And someone saying, you know, you can do what you want to do and have what you want to, and you be what you want to be. You know, what's right for me is right for me, what's right for you is right for you. It's all insane. That's what they're doing now. I'm saying if everybody listened to their conscience, there'd be perfect order on this earth. No confusion. They have wars and nobody come. See? All right, now. Yes, young lady.
Okay, my question has to do back with what you were talking about on the last segment, and the smoking and the drinking and the overeating and being overweight. I realize that part of my overweightness is because of my resentment to my mother.
Good.
The other part I'm wanting to find out is should I be totally always aware of what I'm eating? Will that help me lose the weight faster?
Two things. You want to overcome overeating.
Uh-huh.
You must be aware of your overeating, that is wrong. And then while you're eating, be conscious of the food you put into your mouth, and don't lose yourself in that moment. Don't escape. And that's not an easy thing to do. It only happens when you're ready to give up your selfish life and your also anger and judgment towards your mother. Remember, judgment or resentment is like food to the soul. Every time you judge a person, you fill yourself with a little bit of them, because that's who you are. I wonder if that's too fast for people. See, now, but temptation, when you react to temptation, when you were a child, you resented your mother. Now, a little bit of your mother got inside you. What is the rule of thumb? What temptation creates, temptation is needed to sustain. So if you were created by the temptation of resentment, you will need resentment in order to maintain who you are, period. In other words, you came into existence through the spirit of temptation. Now, in order to grow and to evolve, remember what temptation does to you. It separates you from the ground of your own growing being. You can't be you anymore. For instance, I can't enjoy a relationship with my daddy if my daddy says, "Don't ride the bicycle, son," and then someone comes along and says, "Don't listen to your daddy." The wicked fox comes along and takes me off into his world. How can I enjoy an ongoing relationship with my father? A partnership, the things we could do together, right? And who I am because of my daddy's identity, his love in me, right? So therefore, once you respond to the temptation which is your mother never had love from her husband. She never had love from her father, so she was an impatient witch, pardon the expression. See? And this impatience was an unhealthy authority in her, an unhealthy spirit that needed love and correction and never got it. Very frustrated and impatient with you, and when you were a little child, you saw this monster. There was a monster of impatience, right? And you saw this ugly thing in there that your mother couldn't see it. She was just, being her normal ugly self, but she didn't see it as ugly self. She sees it as normal. Everybody gets mad and upset. This stupid little girl, she just doesn't know what she's doing. She won't listen to me. It's so normal to be upset, but you see it differently. You see it as a evangelism of a spirit, and you resented it. That was your response to your mother's impatience and cruelty. It gets inside you. It gets inside you, and the initiating temptation is her impatience, her cruelty, the spirit of her cruelty, and your conditioned reflex response to it, which is resentment. Now, you are separated from your spiritual father. Now you become the brainchild of your spiritual mother. Follow that? Now you're not who you could have been. You are the extension of the temptation. The only way you can grow to be anything is to be more upset. By being upset, you're able to deny the truth. It's like drinking to forget the guilt of drinking. You follow that?
I eat to forget the guilt.
Yeah, that's right. You eat to forget the guilt, but you're also upset to forget the guilt of being upset. And responding to temptation, whether it's eating, being upset, drinking, is a denial. When you respond to some excitement, see, some stimulus which appeals to your ego, in this case it's resentment, anger, right? Something cruel. You will need something cruel in your life in order to exist, but you will only exist as something cruel. You will become more of a cruel person yourself, but that's the only way you can grow, as a more cruel person. Now this more cruel person feels guilty, so you eat, but you also need to be upset again. Because if you look at your life and all the frustrations in it, it all flashes back to being resentful towards your mother. Every time something goes wrong in your life, because all the little lights go on, bloop, 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 back to blaming your mother. Isn't that right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? Because that's the root of who you are. That's your God. That's the ground of your being. The only way you can grow is to be upset. But being upset is the way to grow and the way to deny what grew. It's a vicious cycle. Did I take you too fast? When you are indulging in an upset, you are anesthetizing your conscience, because when you're angry, you feel right. You forget you're wrong. At the same time, you access the founding spirit of your nature. You access to it. The only way that a human spirit can grow is to seek the ground of what made it for reassurance and reinforcement. It could be love or hate. It doesn't make any difference. The emotional reaction is a bonding, a connection to that source through which more of what you're becoming travels. Who's following me? Is it too hard for you? Well, let me say it one more time. It's not an easy thing, but if you can grasp it, you're home free from a lot of problems. That the purpose of you, in other words, you cannot help but be resentful. You are addicted to anger and resentment like you're addicted to food, like you're addicted to drugs. Because this reaction links you, joins you back to the very thing that made you what you were in the first place. And it also separates you from discovering how wrong you are. Because temptation has a way of anesthetizing your conscience. You see what I'm saying? Let's say your mother upset you and made you want to eat food. You displeased her. And you're a rebellious little kid and you didn't want to eat her spaghetti. And she prides herself. She senses that because you won't eat, she can't put her will in you. So now she upsets you and makes you feel like you did something wrong. You know how women are with their food. You don't know the reason for this. The reason is because a woman is threatened when you won't eat her food. Most women are not concerned for a child eating, because children will eat normally. Children only have problem with food is because there's a will in that food, and children sense that they're being manipulated through the food. Therefore they won't eat. That upsets mother. When mother gets upset, you get upset. When you get upset, you become separate from your conscience. Now the spirit of your mother gets in and you do what she wants you to do. Now you eat. Now you can also eat to get close to the spirit of your mother. But you can also see, because the spirit of your mother is the infrastructure of your soul. Human beings have a soul as well as a body. And the soul is made out of good or it's made out of evil. It has to exist relating to one or the other, otherwise it cannot exist. The soul that you have, this is a little awkward for me to say this to you, but the soul that you have is grown out of evil.
Oh, I know that.
You understand that?
Yeah.
It has an identity with the source.
But what I want to do is get rid of that.
But you must get rid of anger.
So I must be conscious of my anger
You got-
towards my mother when she's around.
But yes, that's right. You first of all have to be conscious of your food, because as long as you're stuffing yourself with food, you're still connecting up to mother and reinforcing your anger.
Well,
because when you stuff yourself, you're that much more angry. You're even angry with yourself.
I'm
aren't you?
becoming conscious of that because I have lost 22 pounds
Good.
now. So now what you're saying is I need to become conscious of my mother when she's around me.
Is she still alive?
Yeah, she'll be here in a couple weeks. She'll be
Okay,
here.
well, it's good practice on the old geezer. practice your forgiveness on. That's what it is. Every time she has many little mannerisms and ways to keep you a child, to keep her will in you. And if you are prideful, you will enjoy that relationship and encourage the closeness. And being angry with her is a way of being close. Because very often when you're angry with her, that's one way of being close. You connect. Don't you? If you respond to me right
because
now.
you think about her.
Pardon?
You think about her, so that's your
Do you
connection.
know that when if I go boo and I scare the living daylights out of you, and you have a tremendous traumatic shock, do you know that you can become addicted to being frightened?
Mm-hmm.
Because the shock can displace who you are, and displace who you are with who I am. Now, how does who I am in you grow? Because that's, in other words,
The anger, the thought,
but
being conscious of you constantly.
You've become addicted to being scared. Have you ever seen people that go to movies to be scared? Why is that? Why on earth would a person go to a movie to be scared? Because
they're addicted to it.
They're addicted to the shock, the trauma of fear. When they were children, things terrified them. It got inside them. But that's who they are. They're connected to the source of their terror. The terror is the spirit of who they are. They feel fulfilled through terror. Who understands that? You do, don't you? You can be fascinated with fire. Same way. All right? So now you've got two things you've got to do. Just quick clue you in. One, you have to be conscious of your eating. It's already doing that. Now you're eating less because the spirit of light, the light of the spirit is now resolving your compulsion to eat, right? So you're eating less, that's leaving more clear space. Now you're not denying truth as much because you're not eating as much, right? Now you're beginning to see the other areas which led you to take away the pain of guilt. And you see the next thing, what's led you to the eating is the resentment towards your mother. And now you must become conscious of your resentments as they rise in her presence. See? In her presence. Watch for it. Wake up in the morning, meditate, concentrate, get yourself into an objective state. Prepare yourself for that day, the eventuality of meeting the gladiator mother of yours, right? See? And when she comes in, you may feel your heart beat just a little bit because you know what to expect. She's got all your buttons, hasn't she? All right? But you stand there and she starts her little monkey business and you watch. And this time when she says something, one of her unkind remarks or pulls one of her little tricks and does one of her cruel little things, instead of being angry with her, or instead of concentrating on her injustice. You know how you concentrate on her injustice?
Uh-huh.
It's a distraction from your own guilt, you see. And how you come up very judgmental, right? And feel very right, and she's very wrong. So, because your right is built on her wrong, right? The sense of right is built on her being more wrong, right? You got it? So instead of doing that, you start looking at yourself. She won't see that. But you're actually looking at these feelings. Watch these little resentments. A little twinge of resentment, like a little electric current in your head. Watch that little tiny resentment, very tiny. Watch it rise and try to pull you in and turn into a judgment, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Watch that and it goes until it goes away.
Because you become conscious of it, right?
Consciousness dries up the smell. Remember I said about the dung the other night?
Yeah.
And that's, it's the same with candy bars. If somebody, the candy bar has an aroma to it. And as somebody passes a big box of candies, I'm sure you feel, You feel the smell pulling you in.
Right.
It does something, and you feel like you want to go right into that.
Well, I'm
and escape
able
into,
to conquer that part.
Sure. So you can still smell the candy bar, and you see, and then you watch your feeling connected to it, and you let it pass. You can still smell it, but you don't lose yourself in savoring it. You know what I mean? Get right into it. That's the hypnotic state, and that weakens you, and it also reinforces your anger towards. See, because when something justifies you, when something excuses you, when you escape into something, it's a kind of love. It's a kind of agreement with what you are. And if you take a person who's angry and you agree with them and you love them and you try to stop them from being angry by being extra kind to them and being sympathetic, you only make them more angry. Have you seen that before?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that the food that you eat, if anger makes you eat food, right? Because it makes you empty and guilty, and then you try to lose yourself and forget the guilt rather than dealing with it. The very fact that you eat the food to comfort really comforts the anger. It really says being angry is okay. So you're angrier next time. And when you're angrier next time, you feel guilty and you start to eat. When you start to eat, the food, it's like a savior. It says anger's okay. It's okay to be whatever you are. And then you find yourself getting angry and angry, eating yourself under the table. No way out. And that leading to other things. And then you get angry at yourself when you look in the mirror. But then when you get angry at yourself, you want to eat. Vicious cycle. Even the cigarette smoker, when he tries to stop smoking, he gets angry with a cigarette. What's it do? Only makes him smoke more. Bite fingernails. You're angry with a kid because he bites his fingernails. He gets angry with you and bites his fingernails more because it's the cause of his biting his fingernails. Following me? Questions?
Okay. Well, the father knows that his son will do against his will. So why to have a child in the beginning?
I think I'll let that one pass. I know what the hell you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. I really don't.
Well, if you don't want to answer my question, that's
I don't.
fine.
It doesn't mean a thing.
Well, what I'm saying is that
I don't want to ask a question. It's just going to go anywhere. You're not following me, so please just lay off and I'll take some other question. All right? Let the lady back over there. You need to be put in your place. It's a stupid question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering, you said...
Goodbye. There's the anger. Watch it now. Right, but you see, you deserve it. Watch your sleep tonight. You'll see that because you're angry with me, listen carefully now, because you're angry with me, I'll make a point. You won't get to sleep tonight or ever again until you give this anger up. Because you're wrong. It was a stupid question and you needed to be corrected. And for the first time in your life you got correction, but instead of taking the correction, you became offended. Somebody else might have sat quietly and says, you know, it's right, it was a stupid question. No, I didn't. No, I didn't. I didn't say it was you were stupid. I said it was a stupid question. And you need to be corrected. It was totally out of order. All right, have it your way. Your question now.
Yeah, you were talking about resenting mothers. And
Yes.
I guess everybody does a little bit.
See, he's my victim now. Everything I said to you just now, to him just now, will happen tonight. He will be so bothered, his mind will be restless. He cannot sleep because he responded. But the response to me is much worse. By the way, I'll come right back. The response to a man like me is very dangerous. See, if you respond to a bad person, it's bad enough. But if you respond to a person who's good and means well by you and is telling you the truth, it's like hating the truth. And it gets into you, and it gets into you very, very deeply. And then you start, anger, the purpose for anger, as I said a few moments ago, is to help you forget the truth. People get angry so they don't have to face the truth. You get angry with yourself, you get angry with others, you judge others so you don't have to feel a judgment on yourself. So the purpose of anger is not to face the truth. The trouble is with this man, you know what's going to happen? He's angry so he doesn't have to face the truth. That's the reason why he provoked me right there with a stupid question. He tried to hang me up with some meaningless question. I know what he was up to, but I wasn't playing, and it backfired on him. Now he's angry with me because he got discovered. His motive wasn't pure, and I know it. See, and he went out here and ran. But the trouble is, the very anger he uses to forget the truth will be the very anger which will cause me to make him remember it. He'll be tormented and he'll be stinging himself like a scorpion. There's no way in the world that you can survive a person like me, hating a person like me. Jesus said, see, they've hated me without a cause. You can hate a bad man and get away with it, to some degree, but not a good man, because it stings you like a scorpion. Because you don't forget the truth when you hate a good man. He makes you remember it for the rest of your life. His spirit, his image gets inside, and it's your energy, your own anger that puts it there. And the more angry you are with yourself, the more you remember the thing you're trying to forget. It kills you.
Yeah, that's the whole key as to why when Christ went on the cross and was crucified, okay, that... Can't hear you.
Well,
that's the whole key as to why when Christ went on the cross as an innocent man and was crucified, the whole world could never forget him.
That's exactly right. They couldn't forget him. He's the most memorable occasion. He was the perfectly innocent man. Okay? Now, we need a lady here. That's a good point.
Yeah, you said that when your mother upsets you, like my mom, she likes to manipulate me and put guilt on me a lot.
Sure.
And you said you should watch your resentment.
Well, but they couldn't put any guilt on you if you didn't resent her. The
No.
guilt comes from resenting your mother. If you didn't resent your mother, you couldn't be guilty and you couldn't be manipulated. You'd have nothing to make up for. You wouldn't need her approval. People manipulate you. They're cruel manipulators like your mother is. Maybe she does it meaningfully, maybe not. But the fact is that you resent her. That separates you from the ground to resist her.
Yeah, no, I want to know, if I act that way, you said you watch your resentment and you don't resent it, would that help her not being that way?
Absolutely. Because, you see, you're playing into her game, meaning that every time you resent her and you give in to her, and go along with her, you're teaching her that being cruel to you is the right way. But if you ever didn't react to her and didn't resent her and didn't go along with her, she'd stand there with egg on her face. Let me give you an example. If I told you a rude joke, or if you told me a rude joke, and I didn't laugh, how would you feel?
Dumb.
Right. Got it. If someone does you dirty and does something to manipulate you, and you just looked at them and you didn't react, they got egg all over their face. They won't do it anymore. You don't have to tell them not to do it. They feel silly. They feel exposed. They feel stopped. They won't even... They will try, perhaps, to confuse you.
Is there anything you can tell them to make them understand a little bit quicker?
No. You mean so you don't have to suffer?
No, she's suffering more than I am.
Well, let her suffer. Because don't stop the suffering. If you stop the suffering, you stop the process that brings her to salvation. Do you know what ruin your children? You give them everything and don't let them suffer. Don't let them learn from their own mistakes. The homosexuals the same way. Don't let them learn from their own mistakes. Just find cures for AIDS and you don't know what kind of a perversion is going to come out of that. Let them suffer, I say. All right?
Okay.
Let them suffer, because suffering sobers people. If you're going to be sobered, suffering will do it. If you can't learn from wisdom, you learn from suffering. And if you don't learn from suffering, you're a dead duck. And that's where you belong. Follow?
Yeah, can I just...
But don't let your... Listen. I'll put it this way. If Roy Masters knew that, and I do know, that what I'm saying on radio and TV is driving everybody mad and everybody's going to kill themselves as a result of except one person who's looking to hear this truth. In the whole world, 4 billion people, only one person can hear what I'm saying. Would I stop speaking the truth for that one person to save the 4 billion? No, I wouldn't. They can all go to hell as far as I'm concerned. I'm only after that one person, because that one person is worth more than 4 billion. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm not going to stop tormenting people because it upsets everybody. All they have to do is turn the television off. But the point is, they can't. As you saw, what happened is, when a person turns the dial and finds me on television, within a few minutes, their bubble is burst, and you can't repair your bubble. Now comes the process of whether you're going to think I'm crazy or you're going to say, well, maybe he's not so crazy, I'm crazy. And thanks, I needed that. But some people go on hating me. They listen to me for laughs. They listen to me get angry. There's a whole lot of Roy Masters addicts out there who don't appreciate the program, but are hating themselves to death.
But if your mom like told you that she regrets she ever gave birth to you, what would you answer?
Well, sorry,
Nothing?
Mom. Nothing. What can you do?
Sorry, Mom.
That's her problem. You're happy. You're alive. You're grateful. She may be sorry, but all right?
Okay. Thank you.
Don't let it bother you. Don't let it intimidate you. It's designed to intimidate you, to make you feel very small. See?
So she could be.
She's trying to intimidate you to make you serve her through guilt.
Okay.
She wants to be the queen bee in the hive, you know what I mean?
Yeah, she does.
I know that. She's a very willful lady. Well, thank you very much. It was an interesting session. I'm glad the man walked out. We learned something. You learned something from him? Yeah. Good. See? Radio program, if you want to listen to me on radio, it's 870 on the dial, 9 a.m. Monday through Friday. And in Los Angeles, that is. And if you want to be in the TV audience, call the number on the screen later on, and you can make a reservation. But very important, we won't survive on this program unless you buy some stuff.